this is something that really gets on my nerves. So those of you who've been paying attention to the war in Ukraine and who are keen observers of military strategy and geopolitics, you will know now that the most important tools and weapons when fighting on the battlefield in Ukraine are what? Artillery, so, from mortars to howitzers, and drones. These are the key ingredients to waging a successful campaign in Ukraine in this particular conflict in 2023. That's just how it is. And of course, when, we say this and we explain this, the mainstream media don't want to say this because they're not giving Ukraine enough artillery or anything to do with drones. They're giving Ukraine gimmicks. They're giving Ukraine expensive things that need restocking and make money for the arms industry. They give them tanks, right? Now Zelensky wants jets. Is there are jets having dogfights in Ukraine and I don't know about it? Are they having tank battles in Ukraine and I just didn't hear about it? This war is not being fought with tanks or jets. Actually, the mines do a pretty good job of substituting Russian tanks. You saw the Bradleys and the Leopards laying, laying on the battlefield in columns of smoking and twisted metal. So now, finally, after 5 months, the New York Times, the BBC, the Wall Street Journal finally have to admit the truth that Ukraine lost the counteroffensive, never had a counteroffensive. It was a miserable failure. And number two, that Russia is winning, or at least let us say holding the line. And that's why Ukraine could not retake any territory because of two key ingredients, right? The drones and the artillery, and that Russia's formidable defenses have helped to keep all of this tightly packed. Ukraine could not get through because of Russia's formidable defenses. Russia is not the one who invented these things, but it successfully employed them in battle. I was telling you these things already about the tank traps. Once again, a tank trap is how you take a bulldozer. They have special vehicles for this because it would take forever for men to do it. You dig a trench, not for men to fight in or to stand in, but for tanks to fall into, and they are so deep and wide that they just cannot get out. Tanks can drive over short spaces, right? Because they have a track and many wheels. But if a tank falls into a space that is too wide and too deep, it cannot get out again, right? So just to show you again, a photograph of the Russian defenses, and they implemented the strategy all across, but even in Crimea, right, where there's no fighting for now. So they basically work in lines. You have multiple lines of defense to fall back to, and Russia also has a good trick that they use, which I'll get to in a second. But speaking of the obstacles in the way, if you've watched movies or you've seen photographs of D-Day, what do you have on the beaches of Normandy? You have obstacles that are there to stop any armored or any vehicles, for that matter, from getting through, right? And there were actually plans back then to get Sherman tanks, not German, American Sherman tanks on the beaches, and most of them sank, which is unfortunate. But my point is that rather than using those obstacles, the hedgehogs, Russia is using what they call dragon's teeth. Sounds pretty badass, honestly. It's basically a concrete pyramid, and you place them in... I'm trying to get you satellite photo of this, right? So you place a giant row of dragon's teeth, right? And then that way you make sure tanks cannot get past it. Yeah, you can see here, by the way, just very quickly, you can see here the multiple lines of defense, right? So every town or major town and city are protected by multiple lines of defense. Okay, so once again, the Russians did not invent this. It's nothing new. but they did successfully implement it. Now here you can see this is from Crimea, although this is equally true for the rest of the battlefield in this conflict. The dragon's teeth are these white dots. You see them down there? So they're concrete pyramids. Huge, heavy buggers, right? Like, there's no way you can drive anything past this, not even a tank. It won't get through. Then on top of that, like, if you weren't content with the dragon's teeth, they have mines, okay? So just, mines that are integrated with pressure plates. So, if a certain weight, a certain amount of kilos presses on this plate, it will trigger an explosive and then destroy the track of the tank's wheels, and which will fall apart, and then people have to get out and repair it, and then of course they put their lives at risk and might get killed and so on. It's very, very, very horrible, and you're stuck in the you're stuck in a minefield with a tank. This is a very terrible fate. All right, it's a very, very, very nasty situation to be in. So they'll have the dragon's teeth, then they have, of course, the minefields, which you cannot see. You cannot see them. The Russians know exactly where they place every single mine, but you don't. That's the problem. You ever played Minesweeper? that stupid game that comes with every copy of Windows, or used to anyway. Yeah. And then on top of the minefields, they have the ditches that I told you about. So again, count that. You've got dragon's teeth, the tank traps, and the minefields. Okay? So, even if you manage to somehow navigate the first row of obstacles, the dragon's teeth, and you somehow manage to get past the minefield, you'll fall into a tank trap, right? Or depending on the order that they're set in. But it's really formidable how they've been able to do this, and that's what Russia has been doing for most of the war. Because the people who report in the New York Times, and all these mainstream outlets, they don't understand what this war is about. They don't understand it's got to do with Russia protecting itself from NATO encirclement, but also Russia trying to protect people in the Donbass. Russia has almost succeeded in taking back all this territory and protecting these people. Now, just keep in mind, because they want you to think like, oh, Russia, Putin just wants to take more territory. Dude, have you ever looked at a map in your life? Russia is the largest country on earth. I don't think Putin has even visited every corner of Russia. That is how goddamn big it is. Okay, he probably has, but Russia is the largest country on earth. I'm pretty sure they don't need or desire more territory, especially one that is in Ukraine and would anger the West. It's really the other way around. We've angered them, and now because we turned a blind eye to them, to Ukraine killing ethnic Russians in the Donbass, we turned a blind eye to NATO expansion, and this is now that the chickens are coming home to roost now. And the thing is that the people who are funding this war and allowing it to continue, they're not even fighting in it. They just go and let Ukrainians do the fighting for them. And so the Wall Street Journal finally decided to publish a photo of the Russian defenses now, like 4 months late. They finally got understood, why isn't Ukraine taking back any territory? What about Russia's defenses? I mean, honestly, this looks like someone drew it in Microsoft Paint or something. But, I think this is so pathetic that they come here like 4 months late. And on top of it, you have to pay to read this junk. And they act like it's some super, special exclusive that no one has ever seen, no one has ever heard of. It's knowledge that only they possess, and we are graced and blessed by their crappy $2 a month subscription. Dude, no one wants to pay for you because you lie all the time, and you come here and act like this news, which is months and months old, is exclusive, and this is why no one likes mainstream media, because they are liars, They literally just do propaganda for the arms industry. That's why no one likes them anymore. Not in England, not in Europe, not in America. Everybody knows you cannot trust the media. They're bastards. And I want to show you here. This is the New York Times. So look at this piece. This is from October 3rd. Okay? So this is just 3 days ago. So they're talking about something I'll explain in a second. But then they say, what has impeded Ukraine's progress? Well, Moscow's use of dense minefields, networks of trenches and tank barriers. I'm so glad you could join us, my friend. You're a bit late, though. Perhaps the most formidable problem for Ukraine is Russia's large stockpiles of artillery, which have been deployed throughout the conflict, and not least to repel the counteroffensive that began in June. No, you don't say. I thought Putin invited Kim Jong-un to visit him and was procuring artillery from North Korea because he was desperate. That's what they called him. The New York Times made fun of Russia. They said, Putin, look at him. He has no weapons. He's going to North Korea. He has no weapons. Well, you're not laughing now, are you? By your own admission, Russia is using large stockpiles of artillery to impede Ukraine. The New York Times says it's perhaps the most formidable problem. Not so funny now, is it? Russia got drones from Iran and artillery from Korea. And those are the key ingredients to winning this war. Or at least holding the territory that Russia has taken so far. It's not just the defenses. It's the defenses and these two things. And I told you, even the Ukrainians are saying this. These are Ukrainian defense officials. The Russians have never said how many artillery shells they fire. That would be giving away intelligence, right? Even though the enemy knows to a certain degree, you don't just volunteer information. But the Ukrainians, okay? So these are Ukrainian figures. The Ukrainians said they're firing 40 to 60,000 artillery shells a day. One Western official said about, I calculated it, he said per year they're firing, so per day, 27,000, okay? So whichever figure you want to take 27,000 a day, 40,000 a day, 60,000 a day? This is insane. Do you know how much time and effort it takes to produce, such an amount of artillery shells? This is unheard of. Even now, with the billions that the DoD in the US is giving the plants and the production, so all these locations where they produce the artillery shells, the 155 shells, even with all the renovations and upgrades and the billions that the DoD is investing, the plants in the United States cannot produce enough to meet the same amount of artillery shells that Russia has at its disposal. And even in 10 years, they won't get there. Even in 20 years, they won't get there. The fact that Russia is able to fire so many is not only helping it hold the territory, but indicative of the fact that Russia has the right friends, understands what wins and what works and doesn't work in this particular theater of war. And also the fact that the Russians, they've been producing this for ages. They didn't just start now. Now, if this conflict goes on for 30 or 40 years, they're going to have a problem, absolutely. But right now, they're doing well for themselves in terms of stocks, right? And there's a good reason why you go to North Korea. It's smart to do that if you know that you need artillery shells. But guess what? Because a lot of the artillery shells in Korea come from the Soviet Union in the first place, all right? So they work on your systems. They're your shells, basically. It's smart to do this. And the drones from Iran, they also made fun of that. Well, they're not laughing now, are they? And on top of it, they're late to the party. Keen observers knew this months ago. This is nothing new. You should not be paying the Wall Street Journal $4 a month or whatever the hell it is they charge to read something that is old and something that they only, it's like pulling teeth. They only tell you now because it's October and the spring counteroffensive never happened. So the funny thing is that despite admitting that Ukraine's counteroffensive has failed, and they couldn't take back any territory. There's in the Western press, they still try to frame it as, well, Russia was trying to capture all of Ukraine and they couldn't take it. No, Russia is not interested in capturing all of Ukraine, you goddamn morons. It's just funny. And you keep in mind, this is something you will see over and over and over again in the media. You know, when things happen, they'll lie about it, or they'll conceal it, they'll twist it. And then after the fact, they will finally give you the truth when it doesn't matter anymore, when it's not difficult to say it. Because if it's spring, if it's May, or it's April, and you're saying, hey, this counteroffensive is failing, it's not good. Although I will agree it's a bit too early to tell then. But let's say summer. If you are in summer and you're the New York Times and you say the Ukrainian counteroffensive is not working, you will get shat on. You will lose your job. The CIA will put pressure on you. You will get shat on. It wouldn't even be printed because it's difficult to say when it matters. Same thing with like weapons of mass destruction. No one was saying, hey, this is rubbish, because it was difficult to say it. It's easy to say it now, right? Same thing with these chemical weapons in Syria. It's easy to say at the time, oh yeah, Bashar al-Assad, the evil Assad regime are using chemical weapons, but it's not true. Even when they know that it's not true, they can't tell you the truth. This is not a free press. This is a controlled, repressive, so-called fourth pillar. This is not a free press. As far as I'm concerned, to me, this looks like, government propaganda. That's what it is. And the CIA, even 50 years ago, had infiltrated all these papers. Today, they don't even need to bother. They are literally hired on set. Like, you can literally see in the lower third, like it says, former CIA agent, former FBI agent. They don't even hide who they are. Former NSA. There's no such thing as former NSA or former CIA. That's ridiculous. You can look here. The New York Times also said that Ukraine's counteroffensive has struggled to push forward across the wide open fields in the south. It is facing extensive minefields and hundreds of miles of fortifications, trenches, anti-tank ditches, and concrete obstacles. Yes, we know that Russia built last winter to slow Ukrainian vehicles and force them into positions where they could be more easily targeted. When both sides' gains are added up, Russia now controls nearly 200 square miles more territory in Ukraine compared with the start of the year. Since January 1st, Ukraine gained 143 square miles. Russia gained 331 square miles. So actually, not only did Ukraine's counteroffensive fail, Russia gained even more territory. By all accounts, and by any metric, any way you look at this, Ukraine is losing on the ground, and this whole war could have been avoided in the first place. It's not like, oh, we like war, and it's like, oh, watching a football match or something. No. Honestly, everybody's losing from this war because it's causing a lot of people to suffer economically, psychologically, everywhere. Prices are up, rent is up. This is stressful. And people that are being sent to die on the front lines, even worse, right? You could, of course, look at it as the catalyst for this, turbocharged BRICS, like BRICS having 40 countries applying, the coups in Niger, all these things. The multipolar world coming together definitely has been sped up as a result of the war in Ukraine, and the sanctions too, and the blowing up of Nord Stream, stealing $300 billion from Russia. You cannot do these things without, causing everybody to just run in the other direction. And that's what the West effectively did. Now, they've been saying, oh, we need to give Ukraine all these weapons, and you have to just, swallow this and accept that things are going to be more expensive because it's for the, it's a little price to pay for democracy, all this bullshit propaganda. And at the end of the day, what did these Challenger 2 tanks do for Ukraine? What did the Bradleys and the Abrams do for Ukraine? What did the Leopard tanks do for Ukraine? Nothing, literally nothing. Russia, as a matter of fact, Russia specifically smoked them out on purpose as a top priority, just to humiliate the West. and of course to, neutralize them. But there's really no tank in the world. Even if you gave them, the best Russian tank, it's not going to get through these fortifications. You cannot get through this. Short of using a carpet bombing and, Jesus, really, you would have to carpet bomb the shit out of this, out of these trenches and tank traps and dragon's teeth, and send in minesweepers and have 50,000 men just to clear this crap. And already I'm being very, very that's too little, honestly. And at this point you would start nuclear war with Russia, because it will be such an escalation. You need so much firepower, and you need the West. You need specifically British troops and American troops to deal with these fortifications, because the Ukrainians cannot. That you would just set off alarm bells in the Kremlin. They would correctly perceive this as an existential threat and respond with nuclear weapons. I mean, what am I supposed to say? So the idea that the Ukrainians will get through this, and even honestly, even if I'm not giving them enough credit, because if you look at all European armies right now, the Ukrainians actually have more combat experience than any European army. They just don't have it. And my point here is just that you would need so much technology and so much manpower to move this. It's either the Russians can demine it themselves because they know where everything is, and they can do it, hopefully when there's peace, and very soon, or you're really going to have to use so much firepower that there will be a nuclear war. So I don't know what to say, except just that the media are so crap and so late and never report the truth, because they're doing propaganda. They're too busy doing that. That's what's going on. And these satellite photos I showed you, these are like a drop in the water, like a drop in the ocean, honestly. It's not even close to how much the Russians have mined and fortified the front line. It's not even close.